Everyone said Emily Sanders was born to shine. Top of the class, adored on campus, her writing the kind that left people breathless. But no one ever asked where her brilliance came from. Phoebe Cross knows. She's lived in Emily's shadow for years, best friend, quiet roommate, forgotten voice. But when a stolen sentence turns into a viral sensation, Phoebe's jealousy ignites into something sharper. Truth with teeth. And this time, she's done being silent. Some girls chase the spotlight. Others burn it down. Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like. It means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The first time Phoebe Cross saw Emily Sanders speak at a university event, she was standing behind her, half in shadow, half in awe. It was the welcome mixer for Crestwood University's Literary Society, and Emily, the newly elected president, was radiant under the soft glow of hanging Edison bulbs. She was dressed simply, a navy blue sweater and jeans, but somehow she made it look editorial. Her voice carried like honey laced with confidence. Writing, she told the room, isn't just expression, it's survival. A hush fell as everyone hung on her words, nodding thoughtfully, as if they'd never heard anyone say anything truer. Phoebe stood near the back, her plastic cup of watery punch trembling slightly in her hand. She had written nearly every day since she was 12. Journals filled with bleeding ink, short stories that crackled with truth, fragments of poetry that made her cry when no one was looking. She thought she had a voice. She thought college might be where people finally heard it. But Emily was already the one they listened to. They shared a dorm their freshman year by luck, or maybe fate, Phoebe once thought. Now, 2 years later, they were roommates in a creaky off-campus apartment filled with paperbacks, shared coffee mugs, and polite silences. Phoebe knew the version of Emily that had crooked teeth before braces, that cried over breakups, that watched horror movies with the lights on. But no one else knew that Emily. They only knew the version that lit up rooms. After the mixer, people swarmed Emily like she was the sun at the center of their orbit. Professors leaned in when she spoke. A junior editor from a campus magazine asked if she'd be willing to submit something, even an old piece, just to feature your voice. Phoebe smiled when Emily turned to her. "This is Phoebe," she said, as if introducing someone charmingly new. "She's an amazing writer. I keep telling her to submit more." It sounded generous. Maybe it even was. But to Phoebe, it felt like being offered crumbs from a feast. Later, as they walked home together under the late September stars, Emily laughed about something a professor said. Her laugh was easy, familiar. Phoebe nodded along, but her fingers curled inside the sleeves of her sweater, digging into her palms. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she was lucky. Not everyone got to be so close to someone like Emily. But in the privacy of her own thoughts, another voice whispered louder. What if it's not luck? What if she's everything you're not? And Phoebe, careful as ever, said nothing. Phoebe woke early the next morning to the soft rustle of pages turning in the next room. Emily always read with real books, never on a screen. Some aesthetic principle about the weight of paper and the soul of a story. The scent of French roast coffee wafted in from the kitchen, and for a moment, Phoebe allowed herself to believe they were just two friends sharing space and dreams. But the illusion only lasted until she stepped into the kitchen. Emily was sitting cross-legged on the counter, hair twisted into a messy bun that somehow still looked intentional, highlighting her cheekbones in the morning light. A copy of the Paris Review lay open in her lap, and she was underlining something with a blue pen. A habit Phoebe always found a little too performative, like she wanted someone to notice she read seriously. "Oh hey," Emily said, looking up with a sunbeam of a smile. "I saved you the last croissant. It's kind of smushed, though." Phoebe took it anyway. "Thanks," she said, chewing through flaky layers and silence. They didn't talk much in the mornings, and that suited Phoebe fine. Mornings were when her mind moved freely, before it got cluttered by compliments aimed at Emily or questions from classmates she barely knew. "What's Emily working on now? Do you think Emily will apply for the LitFest panel? Is it true Emily's professor recommended her for the Atlantic internship?" Phoebe was in most of the same classes, read the same books, stayed up later than Emily most nights crafting her essays. But no one ever asked what she was working on. Her name didn't ripple through the halls or show up in campus magazine footnotes. Their apartment was a collage of mutual compromises. Phoebe's battered typewriter next to Emily's sleek MacBook. Phoebe's hand-penciled notes sharing fridge space with Emily's motivational posts, "You are a force, make your art loud." They existed like two halves of a whole. Only one half always caught the light. Phoebe tried, she really did. She helped Emily edit her essays. She listened to her practice readings. She offered feedback that was always constructive, sometimes even brilliant, but rarely credited. That was just how things were. She remembered the time a professor had complimented Emily on a phrase in her paper. A phrase Phoebe had come up with over late-night coffee and laughter. "You should take credit for that," she had joked afterward. Emily had just smiled. "It was your idea, but I made it work." Phoebe laughed too. She always did. But lately, the laughter came harder. Jealousy wasn't loud. It was quiet and constant, like water dripping into a bowl. It pooled somewhere deep in her, where no one could see. She carried it like a secret ache. That afternoon, as they walked across campus toward their contemporary fiction seminar, Emily linked her arm through Phoebe's and said, "You know, I was thinking, you should totally submit something to the Crestwood Journal. You're seriously such a good writer." Phoebe nodded, but didn't answer. She didn't need Emily's permission to write anymore. She needed her own space to be brilliant. And for the first time, she started thinking about how to carve it out, even if it meant cutting away from Emily's shadow. The flyer was taped crookedly to the English department bulletin board, wedged between a poetry slam poster and a torn ad for freelance proofreading. Phoebe might have walked right past it. She almost did. But something about the words National Literary Student Prize in bold serif font made her pause. She leaned in, open to all undergraduate writers, nonfiction, fiction, and poetry. One winner selected for publication in the Bellwether Review. It was national. It was anonymous. And it was due in 2 weeks. Her fingers hovered over the corner of the flyer, tempted to rip it down, not to hoard the opportunity, but because even seeing it felt like a dare. Emily would see it soon, too. Emily saw everything. Phoebe took a picture with her phone and walked away quickly, pulse thudding just beneath her collarbone. That night, back at the apartment, Emily was curled up on the couch rereading Joan Didion. Highlighter in one hand, glass of Pinot Noir in the other. The lamp cast golden shadows across the room, and Phoebe felt an old, familiar envy press into her ribs. It wasn't even about the wine or the ambience. It was the ease, the way Emily lived like she already belonged to the world she wanted. Phoebe kept her voice casual. "Did you see that flyer for the Bellwether submission?" Emily glanced up. "The one outside Professor Levin's office?" "Yeah. You thinking about entering?" Emily hummed. "Maybe. I mean, I've already got a few things I could polish. But honestly, I'm slammed this month." "What about you?" Phoebe shrugged. "I might." "Cool." Emily smiled. "You totally should." Then she turned back to her book. The moment passed, but it left a mark. Phoebe started writing that same night. Not typing, writing, longhand, the way she used to when she still believed words had weight. She lit a candle and cracked her window just enough to let the cold October air sharpen her focus. She wrote about silence, about feeling invisible beside someone who shines. She wrote about the strange cruelty of being almost seen. It wasn't revenge. It was confession. The words poured out of her like a secret she'd been carrying for years. She wrote until her wrist ached and her eyes blurred, until her thoughts stopped forming sentences and just became feeling. And when it was done, 3 a.m., the sky like slate outside. She read it once, just once, and didn't change a thing. She typed it up the next morning and submitted it under a pen name she'd never used before, C. Roslyn, her middle initials and her grandmother's maiden name. Someone she could pretend was separate from herself. Someone brave enough to be read without apology. She didn't tell Emily, didn't mention it again at all. For the first time, her work belonged entirely to her. No edits, no nods of approval. No suggestions scribbled in the margins. Just the truth, raw, burning, and finally out in the open. The announcement came in an email with the subject line, "Congratulations, Bellwether Review Selection." Phoebe was in the campus library when it landed in her inbox. The ding startled her. She'd been deep in a pile of notes, surrounded by the usual suspects. Black coffee, a mechanical pencil chewed at the top, her ragged moleskine notebook half filled with fragmented ideas. She read the subject line once, then twice. Her heartbeat quickened with something between disbelief and terror. She clicked, "Dear C. Roslyn, we are thrilled to inform you that your personal essay, Dark Without a Sound, has been selected as this year's winner of the National Literary Student Prize. We were struck by the emotional resonance, the voice, and the raw honesty of the work. We will be publishing it in our upcoming winter issue of the Bellwether Review, and we'd love to interview you, if you're open to it, for a short author's spotlight on our website." Phoebe's eyes blurred at the edges of the screen. She pressed her lips together to stop from gasping out loud. She had won. Not Emily. Not someone louder or more charming, or with 1,000 faculty recommendations. She stood up, too quickly, her chair scraping back and earning a few side eyes from the quiet crowd. She shoved her laptop into her bag with shaking hands and half jogged out into the open air, needing space, needing sky. By the time she returned to the apartment that evening, Emily was already on the couch, laptop open, music playing softly. Phoebe dropped her bag by the door and hesitated. Emily looked up and smiled. "You okay? You look flushed." Phoebe blinked. Yeah, long day." She sat down beside her roommate, trying to steady her breathing, her thoughts. She wanted to scream it, to laugh, to dance barefoot in the kitchen. But at the same time, she didn't. Not yet. Not when Emily might ask, "What did you write?" Or worse, "Can I read it?" Phoebe wasn't ready to be known. Instead, she played it cool, drinking tea and scrolling her phone while Emily talked about her TA grading load and a new idea she had for a speculative short story. Something with time travel and grief. Phoebe listened, nodded, smiled in all the right places. The following day, the buzz started. Professors were murmuring in seminar about the anonymous essay that had won the Bellwether. Someone posted a screenshot of the opening paragraph on Instagram, captioned, "Whoever wrote this, just know you wrecked me." The department group chat lit up with theories. Names were tossed around. Students with agents already, people who always spoke confidently in workshops. Emily had her own guess. "I swear it's gotta be Lila Monroe," she said over lunch, chewing absently on a pen cap. "It just feels like her voice. What do you think?" Phoebe sipped her coffee slowly. Could be. But inside, something small and fierce was blooming. Not arrogance, not yet, but something sharper, ownership. A voice telling her, they see you now, even if they don't know it's you. For once, Phoebe didn't have to watch Emily bask in the glow. The light, however faint, was on her, and it felt like stepping into warmth after years of cold. She didn't need the world to know it was her. Not yet. For now, It was enough to know she could do it. Without help, without permission, without Emily. It started with a notification. Phoebe was half awake, swiping blearily through her phone in bed, when she saw the post. Emily Sanders just shared a new piece on her writing page. The thumbnail was a black-and-white photo of a typewriter. Classic Emily. Phoebe tapped the link out of habit, expecting something polished, distant. Maybe another dreamy vignette about identity or longing. Emily was good at capturing atmosphere, even if her work always felt slightly staged, like a girl posing as a writer rather than living as one. But then she read the first line. It's a strange kind of heartbreak, being invisible beside someone who shines. Phoebe sat up straight. Her breath caught. She read the line again, and then the next one. By the third paragraph, her heart was thudding so loudly it drowned out everything else. The ticking of the wall clock, the muffled sounds of a neighbor's music, even her own shallow breathing. It wasn't just similar. It was hers. Not a full copy of the essay she had submitted. That would have been too obvious. But enough. A passage lifted directly from dark without a sound, massaged into poetry, and posted to Emily's 4,000 followers with the caption, "This spilled out of me after a long night of thinking. Vulnerable to share. But that's what writing is, right?" The comments were already flooding in. "God, you always say what I feel. You've got such a gift. This line is devastating. I'm obsessed." Phoebe stared at the screen, phone shaking in her hand. For a moment, she couldn't even think. She just sat there in stunned silence, jaw clenched, fingers trembling. She had trusted Emily with that line. Not in the final draft, but weeks ago, during a late-night conversation when she was still shaping the piece, when the words first tumbled out and Emily had said softly, "That's really good. You should keep that." Phoebe had. And now Emily had kept it too. They didn't see each other until late that evening. Emily breezed in from class, scarf askew, cheeks flushed from the wind. "You will not believe the response to that poem," she said, laughing as she kicked off her boots. "I mean, I thought it was good, but people are freaking out. I might expand it into something longer." Phoebe looked up from the kitchen table, where she'd been trying to grade peer reviews. Her voice came out flatter than she meant. "Yeah, I saw." Emily cocked her head. "You okay?" Phoebe stood slowly. Her heart was hammering now, but she kept her tone even. That line, about being invisible beside someone who shines. That was mine. Emily blinked. "What?" "I said that. Weeks ago. During workshop week. And it's in my essay. The one that just won." Emily's face tightened. Not in guilt, but in calculation. "Okay, well, yeah, maybe you said something like that, but it stuck with me. I didn't think you'd mind. You didn't even tell me you entered. I didn't have to." A beat passed. Then another. Emily crossed her arms. "I'm sorry if you feel like I stole something, but we're friends. We influence each other all the time. It's not like I published your whole piece." Phoebe stared at her, a sick chill rising in her chest. "You didn't even credit me." Emily's voice went cold. "You didn't credit me when I helped you workshop that ending. But I didn't throw a fit about it." It was the kind of response that turned a wound into a trap. Guilt mixed with gaslight. Phoebe stepped back, pulse hammering. This wasn't feedback. This was theft. Emily scoffed, brushing past her into the kitchen. "God, you're so dramatic. Maybe this whole anonymous thing has gone to your head." Phoebe watched her pull out a bottle of wine like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just stripped something vital from her. And something cracked. For months, maybe years, Phoebe had been telling herself it wasn't a competition, that they could both succeed, that Emily's shine didn't take away from her own light. But now she saw it clearly. It wasn't that Emily always won. It was that she didn't even notice when she was taking what wasn't hers. And this time, Phoebe wasn't going to let it go. It began, as most dangerous things do, with a blank page. Phoebe stared at the empty screen in her room, hands hovering over the keyboard. She wasn't writing an essay this time, or a poem, or a letter. What she was about to create wasn't art. It was evidence. She opened a new anonymous blog, one with a clean, minimalist design and no name attached. No mention of Phoebe, no initials, not even a stylized pseudonym like C. Roslyn. Just a title at the top, The Ghost Behind the Golden Girl. And beneath it, a simple tagline. Some stories were never hers to tell. She didn't even hesitate. Phoebe uploaded a screenshot of Emily's viral post, side by side with a screenshot of a paragraph from her own bellwether submission. Same line, same cadence, nearly word for word. She captioned it simply, "This is not inspiration. This is plagiarism." It should have felt ugly, small, but instead, it felt like breathing after being held underwater. That night, Phoebe couldn't sleep. Not out of guilt, but anticipation. For so long, Emily had taken pieces of her, ideas, lines, even Phoebe's insecurities, and stitched them into a polished persona the world applauded. This wasn't about a poem anymore. It was about a pattern. The next day, Phoebe dug through her old messages and Google Docs. She found old conversations where she'd helped Emily brainstorm stories, notes she'd shared, early versions of poems that mysteriously reappeared in Emily's portfolio with different titles. She compiled them into a blog post called, "Share Doesn't Mean Free." Then another, "The Line Between Collaboration and Theft." Then another, "When Your Best Friend Becomes Your Ghostwriter." Each post was careful, factual, no names, but the clues were unmistakable. And soon, people started to notice. By the end of the week, the blog had spread. Someone posted a link in the university's English department Discord. "This can't be about Emily Sanders, right?" Someone else replied, "Wait, those screenshots match her Instagram post." Then came the Reddit thread, then Twitter, then the whispering in the back row of their shared seminar. Phoebe kept her head down. She said nothing, didn't even look at Emily unless she had to. But she felt it, the shift. Emily wasn't glowing lately. She looked distracted in class, her usual bright-eyed charm dulled at the edges. She'd started pulling her hair into a tight, nervous bun, biting her nails again, a habit she hadn't indulged since sophomore year. One evening, Emily stopped Phoebe in the hallway. "Hey," she said. Her voice was brittle. Phoebe froze. "Yeah." Emily crossed her arms, eyes scanning Phoebe's face like she was looking for something. "You wouldn't happen to know who's behind that blog, would you?" Phoebe blinked, slow and steady. "Why would I?" Emily hesitated. "It's not just about me anymore. People are saying I stole all my work. Professors are asking questions. It's getting ugly." Phoebe waited. "You could have just talked to me," Emily said, voice suddenly soft, almost wounded. "Instead of trying to ruin me." Phoebe laughed, not cruelly, just quietly. "I did talk to you. You called me dramatic." Emily's mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time, she didn't have a quick comeback. She looked small. "I didn't think it mattered," she said finally. Phoebe met her gaze. "That's the problem." Emily left without another word. That night, Phoebe sat at her desk, staring at the glowing screen. She scrolled through the comments, the reposts, the validation, the collective, buzzing sense that she was finally heard. And yet, she felt no joy. There was a sourness to it, a weight that hadn't been there when she first hit publish. She had wanted justice. Now she wondered if she'd also wanted something pettier, revenge, recognition, maybe even power. The spotlight was shifting, but it wasn't warm. It was sharp. The literary society meeting was quieter than usual. Chairs weren't scraped into circles. No one touched the complimentary cookies. Even the faculty advisor, Professor Levin, looked uneasy as he straightened a stack of untouched workshop packets on the table. A hush had settled over the group like fog. Heavy, charged, expectant. Emily arrived 10 minutes late, sunglasses still on, hair pulled back too tight, as if the strain might hold her together. She sat 2 seats away from Phoebe, who pretended not to notice. Pretended her stomach wasn't turning over itself. The whispers were no longer just whispers. The department had launched an official integrity inquiry, after a senior editor from the Bellwether Review flagged similarities between Emily's published posts and the winning essay. There were meetings, emails, an emergency session of the selection committee. No names were included in the announcement, but everyone knew. Everyone. Emily's glow was gone. What remained was something brittle and angry, something desperate and unraveling. Later that night, she knocked on Phoebe's door. Not loudly, not with fury, just 2 soft taps. Phoebe hesitated, then opened it. Emily stood there, arms crossed, eyes shadowed and rimmed in smudged mascara. "Can we talk?" Phoebe stepped aside. They sat on opposite ends of the bed, the room thick with silence. For a moment, Phoebe thought Emily might accuse her again, try to turn this into some righteous defense. But when she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "I didn't mean to steal it," Emily said. Phoebe said nothing. I panicked. Everyone always expected me to have something to say, to be brilliant. And I wasn't. Not really. I was dry, empty. And then you said that line and it stuck. It was perfect. And I thought," she trailed off, "I thought maybe if I used just a little bit of it, it would carry me long enough to catch up." Phoebe looked at her numb. "You didn't just use it. You made it yours. You let people believe it was yours." "I know." Emily's voice cracked. "I know I messed up." Phoebe crossed her arms. "You didn't mess up. You made a choice." Emily flinched. For the first time, Phoebe felt in control. But it didn't feel like power. It felt like grief. "I kept thinking," Emily said, "if people found out, I'd lose everything. And now they have. And maybe I deserved it. But—" She swallowed hard. Her voice dropped. "I'm scared, Phoebe. I don't know who I am if I'm not her." Phoebe blinked. That voice, raw, unguarded, didn't sound like the Emily who commanded attention at readings or gave interviews in flawless soundbites. It sounded like someone who had built their identity out of applause and didn't know how to stand without it. Phoebe's throat tightened. "Then maybe it's time you figure that out." Emily left quietly. Phoebe sat in the dim light of her desk lamp, her half-finished draft of a new essay open in front of her. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but the words wouldn't come. She thought it would feel good, watching Emily fall, watching the truth emerge. And in some ways it did. But beneath the satisfaction lay something colder. Something that whispered, "You burned her down. Now what's left of you?" Her story had been stolen. But in taking it back, she'd also rewritten something else. Their friendship, their history, maybe even herself. She had won. But it didn't feel like a victory. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Emily had moved out 3 days after their conversation. She didn't slam doors or leave angry notes. She just disappeared. Clothes gone, drawers emptied, her side of the fridge stripped of almond milk and raspberry jam. The only thing she left behind was a printed quote taped to the mirror, one they'd both loved once. "Fame is a mask that eats the face." John Updike. Phoebe ripped it down without thinking, but didn't throw it away. Campus felt different too. No one looked at Phoebe quite the same. Not with pity or malice, but with a certain cautious reverence, like she was someone who'd once done something powerful and dangerous. Students still whispered when she walked into lecture halls. Professors gave her knowing nods. Her inbox now contained invitations to speak, to write, to read aloud. And yet, she found herself saying no. No, I'm not ready. No, I have nothing new. No, not this semester. Because when she sat down to write, nothing came. Not words, not images, not even fragments. Just silence. One evening, she wandered into the university gallery, where someone had posted a printout of her anonymous bellwether essay on the wall as part of a Voices of Crestwood installation. It was printed large, black letters on soft ivory, framed beneath dim lighting. No name. No name. Phoebe stared at it for a long time. People drifted by, reading, nodding. One girl wiped her eyes. Another took a photo. They didn't know it was hers. And they didn't need to. She had written that essay from the deepest part of herself, the part that felt invisible, unseen. She had turned her jealousy into something honest, something raw. And people felt it. It had meant something, even if it came at a cost. Weeks passed. Winter crept in. Phoebe began journaling again. Not to publish, not to prove anything, just to listen to herself, to trace the shape of her thoughts in ink. One morning, she opened her laptop, pulled up a blank document, and typed 4 words. This is a reckoning. She didn't know yet what it would become. A story, an essay, a letter never sent. But for the first time in weeks, her fingers kept moving, because underneath the wreckage, there was still something left of her voice. Not just the girl in the shadow, not just the ghost behind the golden girl, but Phoebe Cross. And this time, the story would be hers alone.